Most videos about empty Nebraska start with the price of farmland. They get it backwards. As of February 2026, Nebraska farm ground averaged $3,905 an acre. A single quarter section runs about $625,000. That is not cheap land. That is some of the most expensive farmland in the country. The dirt is fine. It is everything built on top of the dirt that is coming apart. A village that hands you a building lot for free and then writes you a check for $25,000. A town with about 180 living residents and 120 wooden ones. 550,000 square feet of corporate office space advertised in the Wall Street Journal at $1 a year. And at number 1, a town that voted itself out of existence, where a man still cannot give his empty lots away to anybody. We cover real places here, what works in them, and what quietly stopped working. Subscribe if that is useful to you. Today, 10 Nebraska towns where the town is worth less than the ground underneath it. Stay to number 1, because that is the one that actually answers the question. Number 10, Lwood, the town that pays you $25,000 to show up. The lot is free. Not cheap, free. You put down a $500 deposit that comes back to you when the house is finished, plus a $50 permit fee. That is the entire cost of land in the Wheatfield addition on the west edge of town. Then, once you move in, the village pays you 10% of your construction costs, up to $25,000. Lwood is one of exactly 2 towns left in Nebraska doing this. Population 658 at the 2020 census, down from 707 in 2010. It is the county seat of Gosper County, which has 1,893 people spread across 458 square miles. The catch is the part the brochure leaves out. Free land only helps if you can build. And in a village of 658, there are no comparable sales, no contractor competition, and a bank that may not want to lend on a house worth less finished than it costs to make. The thing that makes the lot free is the same thing that will make the house hard to sell. Nebraska passed a law in 1991 letting towns spend local money on incentives like this. Lwood voted for it. In more than a decade, the program has produced 8 finished homes. A 9th is going up. The 8 families who took the offer are not really the story. The story is everyone who read it and kept driving. Number 9, Curtis, which is not the county seat, despite being the largest town in Frontier County. That job belongs to Stockville. Curtis just has the people, all 806 of them. Curtis also gives free lots, but it does something Lwood does not. It pays a bounty on children. Move here from another school district with kids under 18, and the town cuts you a check. $750 for 1 child, $1,250 for 2. $1,750 for 3 or more. The money is only released once the children are actually enrolled at Medicine Valley Public Schools. Curtis has put a price on a desk. Now, I want to be careful here because Curtis is not dying. Frontier County has grown from 2,519 in 2020 to an estimated 2,655 in 2025. The town has a restored theater, a library, a senior center, and something almost no 806-person town has anywhere: a college. The Nebraska College of Technical Agriculture has been in Curtis for 117 years and enrolled 213 degree-seeking students, last fall up 6%. Leadership credited a new online veterinary technician program for most of that increase, which means a rural college is now staying alive by teaching students who never come to town, which is also the trap. Roughly 213 of the people here are a line item in a University of Nebraska budget, and a 2-year college produces graduates, not families. They leave. That is what a 2-year degree is for. Curtis is not buying residents. It is buying next year's kindergarten class, and it knows exactly what happens if it ever stops. Number 8. Taylor. It wasn't an art project. It was an economic development stunt. That is Mara Sandoz, and she is describing the reason there are about 120 wooden people standing around this town. They are life-size plywood cutouts, black and white, of real residents who lived in Taylor between 1890 and 1920. She started in 2003 with two figures, Herbert and Alice, placed near the old Pavilion Hotel. She makes about 6 more every year. Her stated goal is to eventually have as many wooden villagers as living ones. She is closer than you would think. Taylor has roughly 180 people. The Pavilion Hotel is worth stopping on, actually. 3 stories, built in 1887 by a man who was certain the railroad was coming. It stopped 13 miles east at Burwell instead. Burwell got the shipping, the trade, and the next 100 years. The hotel failed almost immediately and is still standing, and it made the National Register of Historic Places in 1989, a landmark whose entire significance is that somebody guessed wrong. Everything after 1887 is just compound interest on that one routing decision. Taylor is the county seat of Loup County, population 607 at the last census, the 5th least populous county in Nebraska, and the 10th least populous in the United States, population density 1.07 people per square mile. The county lost an estimated 37 more people between 2020 and 2025. In a county of 607, that is about 6% of everybody. The villagers bring people off the highway. They do not bring much money because there is almost nothing in Taylor to spend it on. Every year, the wooden population goes up by 6, and the real one does not. Number 7. Cody. And this one grew. 168 people at the 2020 census, up from 154 in 2010. The school district is expanding. Voters passed a bond in 2024 to build a new one. I am putting Cody on this list, not because it is failing, but because of what it had to do to avoid failing. At 168 residents, Cody sits below the population floor where any grocery chain will build. Not a supermarket, not even a dollar store. The nearest option is a 40-mile drive down Highway 20 to Valentine. So, the high school built one. The Circle C Market opened the 29th of April 2013, and it is made of straw bales. Donated 2,300-pound round bales, torn apart by students into smaller squares held together with chicken wire. Students troweled the stucco on the outside. The drafting class drew the floor plans. One student bid on the roofing job and won it. The land is leased from Nebraska Game and Parks on a 99-year term, granted only after the students and teachers drove to Lincoln to argue with a refusal. Kyle Hesseltine was in 8th grade for that meeting. Her takeaway: I absolutely did learn to not take the first. No. She has pointed out that if they had taken it, Cody would have no milk, eggs, or potatoes for sale. The students still run it, pricing, stocking, checking in trucks, the books. Purdue sells at little to no markup because the teacher who runs the store drives to Valentine to get it herself, and to a Walmart in Chadron twice a month because delivery trucks will not come this far for an order this small. Statewide, Nebraska had 204 rural grocery stores in 2021, down nearly 30% from 295 years earlier. In the 5 years before 2024, stores closed in Harrison Crawford, Hay Springs, and Rushville. And here is the honest part. The Circle C survives because it is not a business. It is staffed by unpaid students during school hours and carried by the district. If Cody Kilgore ever consolidates, the store goes with the school, and the reason anybody can live here goes with the store. One of the founders, Stacy Adamson, was working the counter when a woman who had just gotten out of the hospital came in on oxygen and bought a very small order. The woman leaned on the counter, could barely breathe, and started crying because she did not know what she would do without the store. Adamson started crying too. That is not a grocery store. That is a town holding its own hand. If you have lived in a town like any of these, or you are from one and you left, put the name in the comments. Not a general reaction, the actual name of the place. That is genuinely how we find the next list. Fair warning though, from here down it stops being about incentives and starts being about consequences. Number 6. Trion, 859 square miles, 369 people. That works out to 0.46 people per square mile, which makes McPherson County the least populous county in Nebraska and the 5th least populous in the United States. There is no incorporated municipality anywhere inside it. Not one. Trion is the county seat, and Trion is legally not a town. It is one of only 2 unincorporated county seats in the state, along with Harrisburg over in Banner County. Trion had 157 people in 2010. It had 107 in 2020. That is a 31.8% loss in a single decade, and it is the fastest 10 years of decline in the place's history. The origin of this is federal. The Kincaid Act of 1904 offered 640-acre homesteads out here, specifically because everyone understood that 160 acres was not survivable in western Nebraska. People came. But the sandhills are grass sitting on sand. They carry cattle at very low density, and they carry row crops, essentially not at all. 2 railroads surveyed routes through the county, and both walked away. The homesteaders sold to the big ranches, and that consolidation has never stopped. Here is my favorite detail in this entire video. McPherson County had about 75 producers running 41,000 cattle in 2022. That is roughly 100 head of cattle for every human being. And when producers move a herd across the county roads, the sheriff and his 1 deputy follow the cattle and put lights on them to protect the animals from motorists. In a county with almost no motorists, which brings me to the part I did not expect. Trion is not a failure. It is a working, profitable ranching economy doing exactly what this land supports, with exactly as many people as it needs. There is no crisis here to fix, which is why nobody is coming and why nobody who lives here is asking them to. Number 5. Kimble once had the largest concentration of intercontinental ballistic missiles on the planet and more than 1,400 producing oil wells. Today, the county has 3,391 people, and a quarter of them do not live in a town at all. Both of those titles were real. Kimble County was called the Missile Center of the United States. It was also called Nebraska's oil capital, and it earned it. In 1968, the county led the state with 382 producing wells, and 128 of Nebraska's 318 oil fields were inside its lines. It still had over 1,400 active wells as late as the 1,982nd. Oil showed up in western Nebraska in 1949. Nebraska crude production peaked in 1962. Drilling collapsed from 1,005 wells in 1961 to 289 in 1966. Then, the Cold War buried a missile field under the wheat ground and brought federal payroll with it. Both booms were extractive. They pushed enormous money through the county without leaving an industry behind. When the wells thinned and the missile mission consolidated, Kimble was left holding the buildings a much larger town had needed. County population 4,089 in 2000, down to 3,434 in 2020. Estimated 3,391 in 2025. That is a 16% loss in 25 years. Median age in the city, 47.9. More than a quarter of residents are over 65. And 842 people, 25% of the county, live at no address in any municipality scattered across 952 square miles of wheat, pasture, and capped wellheads. I will admit something. If I were picking one town on this list to actually move to, it would probably be this one. Interstate 80 runs through it, Denver is a real drive rather than a fantasy, and the housing is cheap. Actually, let me back up, because I cannot tell you how cheap. The sales data for Kimble is so thin it contradicts itself inside the same report. What I can tell you is that houses there sat an average of 179 days on the market in the period ending April 2026 against 144 days a year earlier. 6 months to sell a house. The bargain and the trap are the same number. Kimble's population loss has almost stopped since 2020. Roughly 43 people in 5 years. That is not recovery. That is a town that has finished finding out how small it is. Number 4. The vote was in May 2014. It passed by one ballot. What they voted on was whether Seneca, Nebraska should continue to legally exist. It should not have come to that, and the thing that pushed it there was horses. The winter before, some horses in town were in poor condition, and the village board responded by passing a ban on livestock inside the village limits. That ordinance is what started it. What followed was a campaign involving allegations of voter intimidation and fraud, and after the vote, lawsuits and criminal cases. Village officials eventually dropped their suit after they found out that Seneca had already ceased to exist a few hours before their court hearing. A member of the Thomas County Board summed up the aftermath to the newspaper at the time. People are going to be mad at each other until they die. It got strange enough that Radiolab made an episode about it. Now, rewind. Seneca existed because of weather. In the winter of 1887 to 1888, construction on the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad stopped for the season in western Thomas County, and a town got established at the spot where the crews were sitting. The railroad made it a division point, which meant a roundhouse crew changes and steady wages. For years, it was the largest settlement in the county. Then, the roundhouse closed. Steam gave way to diesel. Division points became obsolete across the whole Great Plains, and Seneca's entire reason for being on a map evaporated in one technological shift. Population, 51 in 2000, 33 in 2010. There is no 2010 style comeback story after that, because there was number 2020 village count. The village was gone. The county board was scheduled to meet that July to decide when to turn off Seneca's streetlights and what to do with roughly $50,000 in inherited village property, including a community center the residents had built themselves out of an old town gymnasium about a decade before. That is where the reporting stops. I do not know what happened to the building, and I am not going to guess. At the time Seneca dissolved, Nebraska had 529 incorporated cities, towns, and villages. The ordinance was never really about horses. It was about whether 33 people still needed a government, and about half of them had already decided. 2 entries left, and they are the 2 that changed how I think about this whole state. Hit the like button if you are still here. It genuinely helps. Number 3. I think this is the strangest thing on this list, and it is not close. Outside the village of Wallace, population 318, there is a farm covering 19,500 acres that 4 government agencies bought so that it would never be farmed again. The price is reported between $80 million. The full project ran around $110 million. It came with 115 groundwater wells, and 15,800 of those acres have been permanently retired from irrigation and are being seeded back to native grass. They did not want the dirt. They wanted the water under it. The Republican River Compact was signed in 1943, splitting the river 49% to Nebraska, 40% to Kansas, 11% to Colorado. It was written before center pivot irrigation existed. Then in 2002, a settlement folded groundwater pumping into the accounting, including upland wells nowhere near the river. Overnight, tens of thousands of Nebraska wells that had run legally for decades became part of somebody else's ledger. Kansas sued and asked the United States Supreme Court to permanently shut down somewhere between 300,000 and 500,000 irrigated acres in Nebraska. The court declined to order it. Nebraska's countermove was to buy its way out. Rather than let a court decide which farms went dark, 4 natural resources districts pooled money in the fall of 2012 and bought one enormous farm outright. 30 high-capacity wells and more than 20 miles of pipeline went in, and the well field came online in spring 2014. Every June, Nebraska has to have 40,000 acre-feet sitting in Harlan County Reservoir ready for Kansas. Roughly 31,000 of that gets pumped out of this ground. Nebraska farmers funded the entire thing themselves through an occupation tax on irrigated acres. No property taxes. They tax themselves to take a farm out of production forever. Here is the trade-off, and it is a big one. It worked. It kept hundreds of thousands of Nebraska acres irrigated and kept a court from choosing losers. But it established in law and in cash that in this basin, the water and the land are separate things, and that the water under your farm can be purchased out from underneath it. Lincoln County, where all of this sits, has lost more people in raw numbers than any county in Nebraska. Since 2020, down 1,309 in 3 years alone. North Platte's mayor has said publicly that he is not sure how much the city can even do about it. From the air, you can still see the pivot circles in the new grass. Perfect rings, going green in the wrong way. Number 2. The water tower still says Cabela's World Headquarters. City of Sydney, it is still painted the company green. 2 bronze stags are still locked in combat at the interstate exit. The company has been gone since 2017. Behind the retail store, there are 550,000 square feet of corporate office space, mostly empty. It has been offered on a lease of $1 per year. Bass Pro took out an advertisement in the Wall Street Journal to say so. It started with a classified ad too, which I did not know until I read it twice. In 1961, Dick Sabella ran a 22-word listing in Sports Afield offering free trout fishing flies. He was left holding 2,800 unsold flies. That turned into one of the largest homegrown businesses in Nebraska, headquartered in Sydney for 54 years. Then, in 2017, Sabella sold to Bass Pro Shops for $5 billion. The company did not fail. It succeeded so thoroughly, it became worth buying, and the buyer was in Missouri. About 2,000 jobs eventually disappeared from a town of roughly 6,600 people. Close to 1 job lost for every 3 residents. The local paper ran a full-page ad. Last one out, turn off the lights. Homes for sale in Sydney more than doubled to about 150. A realtor named Stephen Wolf makes his 4 sale signs by hand, and he ran out of them. Now the part that surprises people. Sydney did not empty out. It lost about 436 residents from 2016, roughly 6%, and it started growing again in 2020. One rural development consultant who worked there said he would have predicted at least a 20% decline. What collapsed was not the population, it was the income. Median household income in Sydney was $61,667 in 2017. By 2021, it was $49,812. White-collar corporate salaries were replaced by manufacturing wages. The typical home value now sits around $115,600 against roughly $370,000 nationally. Sydney kept its people and lost its middle class. Those are not the same kind of survival. A former employee named Corey Keene put the identity problem plainly. Cabela's had been what Sydney was for so long that when the company left, people simply assumed the town had gone with it. The town is still there. The water tower just has not been told yet. Number 1. The roads are gravel. They used to be paved. There are 20 houses. There is a school building nobody has used since the early 2000s, and a stretch of vacant storefronts, and one structure noticeably newer than everything around it, which is the fire hall, which the residents paid for out of their own pockets about 11 years ago. And every single morning, farmers walk into the old village office, sit down with coffee and a deck of cards, and talk. The building they are sitting in used to be the seat of a government that no longer exists. This is Lamar in Chase County, 5 minutes from the Colorado line. 28 residents, 20 homes, 2 commercial businesses. In November 2024, the people who live here voted 5-1 to unincorporate. Chase County commissioners made it official that December. Lamar stopped being a village. It is now the county's problem, and mostly nobody's. There were 120 people here in 1940 Mary. 19 by 2000, 28 today. The man who was chairman of that village board for its last 10 years is named Rod Wyest. He moved out here from Colorado in 1976 and bought a house in town in 1983. He can tell you the exact moment this became inevitable, and it was not a farm crisis or a bank failure. In the 1,960 seconds, the state moved U.S. Highway 2 miles south. 2 miles was enough. The hardware store went. The barber shop and the lumberyard went. When we lost the railroads and then when the highway moved out, YS said, it kind of sealed our fate. Then the farms got bigger. Flood irrigation needed hands. Center pivots did not. Fewer jobs meant fewer families. Fewer families meant fewer children. And the school, which only ran to 8th grade anyway, fell from 40 or 50 students to about 15 and closed in the early 2000s. A town without a school has no way left to acquire children. By 2024, the village government existed as paperwork, maintained by people who could see there would be nobody to replace them on the board. And the honest part is that unincorporating was probably right. It ended an absurd burden. Life there is quiet, the crime is close to nothing, the volunteer fire department still runs, and much of the population now is Spanish-speaking families who came for the agricultural work. But the head of the League of Nebraska Municipalities is blunt about it. She has never once seen an unincorporated community bring itself back. Nebraska is down to 376 villages, and Lamar is not one of them. Which brings us back to the title of this video, and the reason none of it was ever about $10,000 farms. Rod Wyest has vacant lots in Lamar. He has been trying to sell them. He has stopped expecting it to happen. I keep thinking Walmart is going to come along and buy some ground out here, he said. But I don't think they're going to. Farm ground in this state runs close to $4,000 an acre. Town ground, in a town that no longer legally exists, runs whatever you can get, which is nothing. Asked about the neighbors who are still there, Wyeth said this, we all know each other. Whether you're 5 miles down the road or 10 miles down the road, you're a neighbor, which is the thing that survives after the government, the school, the store, and the highway are gone. Nebraska is not emptying evenly. Some of these places are growing, some are stable, and a few have simply finished. If I could only keep one of them, it would be Cody, because a village of 168 people built a grocery store out of straw, rather than accept a 40-mile drive for milk. Tell me which one you would actually live in and subscribe if you want more of these. And when you picture this state, picture the last shot. 4 men in their 70s, playing cards at a folding table in a building that stopped being an office 2 years ago.